or I am, how many times do you make that happen? I'm going to guess probably 9 out of 10 times, if not 99.999999999%, right? And the only reason you don't do it that point, whatever fraction of a percent that is because the universe, God, or something else said this is going to harm you. But when you tell yourself you're going to do something, you make it happen. So where there's a will, there's what?
Me.
All right. So why do we hand that power over? Why do we willingly say, oh my gosh, it may happen, it might happen, I hope, I wish, I'm going to tell you to get some of that language out of your vocabulary. I will, I have, I am, versus I wish, I might, I'd like, maybe. Where there's a will, there's a way. Because why do we willingly hand that over? We give that over without even thinking about it. Let me ask you another question. How many of you, when you were a kid, maybe this was just me, had like a crazy creative, really strong imagination? You would create all kinds of stories in your head. You'd make forts. Remember the forts you used to make in your living room with the blankets? And rainy days were awesome, man. You just got to play in this space and have, kingdoms that you would build. I remember reading books like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which was such an escape for me. I had a really crappy, noise going on in my childhood and things that just weren't pleasant. So it was my escape. I got to go back and kind of pull that fort, and I'd pull out that book. And I remember pretending I was going into that wardrobe like there was no tomorrow, because it took me to the land of Narnia, right? For those of you that haven't read it, this is this magical place where people fight and there's wars and it's amazing and it's colorful and it's huge in terms of what I could create in my own mind. And I remember I took my friend's 12-year-old daughter to see it when it came out on the big picture. And I was like, oh my gosh, I know how they do the books. I read books and my imagination goes here, and then I see the movie and it goes here. And so I usually am disappointed when I see a movie when it's, I read the book first. So I was like, but this is Chronicles of Narnia. This is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's going to be up on the big screen. And I remember sitting there feeling like someone reached in to when I was 8, 9, 10 years old and captured the essence of what was in my imagination and put it up on the screen. And my 12-year-old friend, who she's now like, I don't even know, 20-something, it's hard to believe, but she was like, that's exactly like the book I'm reading right now. And it was so cool because we had this engaging conversation. And it made me think, how many of you are still doing that now? How many of you are sitting there and allowing your imagination to play and create these magnificent kingdoms? And, I know when I was little, I used to put that towel on my head and I pretended I was Superman or Supergirl or whatever, right? I wanted to be a superhero. I was invincible. I had these superpowers. Yet somewhere we lose that. We lose that ability to let our imaginations create these magical, amazing places. Why? Because of roles and responsibilities and, wow, I got a job and I got kids and I got to do this and I got to do that. And somewhere between being a kid and being an adult, we lose that. Because we have this notion that, well, that's what being an adult's all about, right? Does it have to be that way? I'm going to tell you absolutely not. Because here's the kicker. All of that stuff you fuel your imagination is exactly what you need to have the power to create the things you want. So when you don't fuel your imagination, when you don't add those things and allow yourself the time to play, you're shortchanging all of that fuel that's going to allow you to play bigger, think bigger, do bigger, be bigger. And so we get a lot of noise that starts to shut that down. I have a story I want to share with you. A friend of mine, he's the CEO of a pretty large organization. And like I said, I've got 20 years corporate experience, and I've really played at the executive level, leadership level, built a lot of teams. But he was really struggling with his own team, his executive management team. And his family once a week would get together, kind of like you guys are doing now, and dine. And he used his family as kind of a board, his board of advisors. And so everyone got the opportunity to talk about something that was going on in their life, whether it was something really joyful or something they were really struggling with. So then the whole family got to weigh in and give feedback and vet it out, which is kind of a really cool concept, right? Because we're always going so busy, nonstop, here and there, and sometimes we don't take time for those quality conversations. So they had a dedicated night every week that was family night. That was a way that the family connected. It didn't matter how old the kids got, anything else. So he was really struggling with the team that he was managing. And, he's going on and on and on and on. And his 4-year-old said, but Daddy, how come you guys don't have fun? He's like, you guys don't play. And he sat there and he was completely just dumbfounded. Because his 4-year-old was right. He's like, my God, it doesn't sound fun what we do. And no wonder they're not engaged. There's no culture of this energy, this what. So he said, he goes, my team thought I was crazy. I mean, this is a bunch of executives sitting around a board table. He's like, I brought in coloring books and games. We had a strategy session the next day. They all looked at me like I was nuts. About 10 minutes in, when everybody's egos left the room, and they started to color, he's like, it was the best strategy session we've ever had. I cannot tell you how fast we couldn't keep up with the flip charts and the whiteboards and whatnot. The ideas were going so fast. We now have play day once a month instead of strategy day. It's amazing how much my team's engaged in what we can do. A 4-year-old was the one that figured it out. And I say that because as adults, we create this noise. We create this belief system. We create this self-talk and this thing that goes through our head. And you'll see, and I shared this with you, as I go through this, you've got the tools in front of you that'll actually break down. And so I say, if we're going to destroy the noise, which I am all about, let's destroy the noise. Love you. Destroy the noise. We first need to figure out what the noise really is, right? We say noise. What does it I really mean when I'm telling you, let's destroy the noise? Let's get rid of it. Let's blow it up. Because the only way we can unlock that inner superhero we talked about before is to get rid of the stuff getting in our way, right? So what is the noise? It's the negative self-talk in your head. It's the perception you have of yourself and the capabilities you think you don't have and limit yourself. It's all that negative nonsense that you just keep spinning round and round and round. I'll give you an example. I have a client I work with, and I tend to work with a lot of people that looked like me 10 years ago, and I'm still a recovering perfectionist. I am a type A, if you haven't already figured that out. Type A plus, 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 plus. It goes off the charts. Control freak. I like to drive. I was very successful in my career, and there was a reason. I don't look my age. People don't take me seriously, and I was out there to prove a point that I could climb just like anybody else. And so I did, and I played hard. I work with a lot of people that look like that. They're wound around the axle. They know how to be successful. They know how to go after it. Yet they're grinding and grinding and grinding, and they push and they push and they push, and they're also really negative about their own self-worth. They sit there and say, I have to do this because I have to prove myself. I'm not worthy. I'm not. And I know that because I've walked that talk. So I have a client who, he is a type A, wound around the axle so tight sometimes that it's like, oh my gosh, Sean, take a step back. And he started to tell me, he wants to fuel his soul with these motivational, inspirational type thoughts. So he does a lot of reading. He does a lot of Wayne Dyer. He does a lot of Brian Tracy. He does a lot of the stuff that I read, especially being a certified law of attraction practitioner. What he wanted to tell me, he's like, I know sometimes I read the more heavy, intense, really like the 21 chapters, and don't get me wrong, I love Brian Tracy's Power, No Excuses, Power Self-Discipline, but it's like a graduate novel. When you go through it and you really want to dig in, it's amazing, but it's meaty, and it's heavy, and it's rich, and you got to dig into it. He's like, I just felt like I needed something lighter. And this is what he said. I know this sounds cheesy, but I found this book, and I said, I stopped listening to you. He's like, what? I totally interrupted him. I said, I stopped listening. Because you just told me that this is cheesy. I have a lot of stuff going on in my head. So therefore, you just told me, why should I even bother filling my head with that? Because you just gave me a filter to say, that's cheesy, that's nonsense. It's completely not in the space that I usually put myself. So it is beneath where I'm trying to be.